I wanted to hold space for everything, which I thought meant I'm just going to sit in my room grieving all day. But the grief came in such a dance that sometimes there was laughter, sometimes there was like this deep remembrance and appreciation, sometimes there was anger, sometimes I say was, but it's still, sometimes there is this feeling that I really understand that we're all connected, that we're this energy running through everything. And I feel like I deeply appreciate his journey. And then in the next moment, I could be like, how could you do this to us all? How could you leave us? And what I noticed with people holding space for me was if I said I'm angry, they would try to soothe me by saying, I know you're angry, but this is a mental health issue. And that for me was like, yeah, and I can be angry.
You just lost your loved one. Now what? Welcome to the Grief and Life podcast, where we explore this new reality through grief-colored lenses. Openly, authentically, I'm your host, Nina Rodriguez. Let's get started.
Today, we have an amazing guest that I'm very excited to interview. Her name is Danielle Catherine, and she is a dedicated mother, women's health mentor, doula, and female yoga teacher. She is the author of her most recent book, Reclaiming Circle, and the host of Women's Circle Online. She lives nomadically with her family and hosts women's circles wherever she lands. And she is also the host of the Depths of Motherhood podcast, where she welcomes guests to raise awareness for undisturbed birth and conscious parenting. Last month, she released her book entitled Reclaiming Circle, a guide to holding women's circles. So congratulations for that. That's a huge accomplishment. And she's also here to share her grief story following her brother's death by suicide this year. She wants to create awareness and to share how her own practices of nervous system regulation, women's circles, and biomagnetic practices have supported her through the waves of grief. With that, I would like to welcome Danielle Catherine to the Grief and Life podcast.
Thank you so much, Nina, first of all.
I do want to put you on the spot a little bit right off the back. I know that your podcasts start with a grounding practice. It's very brief and we take a deep breath, which I really appreciate. And I would like to ask if you would guide our listeners in a brief grounding practice so we could receive your message fully.
I would absolutely love to. Can I just drop her off in the other room?
Absolutely. She's adorable, by the way. She has her beautiful daughter right next to her who wants to join the podcast. You're more than welcome to.
Yeah, she always wants to be on. And I'm always a little bit like, what is she going to be? Is she going to come in and sit with me? Is she going to be with a puppy? And that's also why I do this grounding meditations, because I have to be prepared for everything that's going to come in the recordings. Just take a moment to land. And I really appreciate you opening the space for me to share this. And if we can all take a moment to notice our space, the space that is holding us, the space that is holding our physical body, and notice where the body is landing. So maybe where the sit bones are resting, maybe you're laying down or standing up. And just notice the parts of the body that are held by the earth. And let's draw that breath in, feeling the breath slowly come in through the nose or the mouth, which is either most comfortable. And notice where in the body expands as the breath comes in. And let your beautiful exhale be that reminder to soften the body, coming to sink into your physical being, holding space for any thoughts that come up, any emotions, any physical sensations, and knowing that we can hold all of it. We can witness it, we can love it, we can let it come, and we can let it go. And taking this time now to feel into gratitude for these spaces created for one another, to remember, to feel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was beautiful and beautiful way to get started. You have a very interesting beginning to your life. I feel like it was a lot of puzzle pieces that came together with time into this beautiful, grounded energy that could be felt literally worlds away. And it's part of the reason why I was so thrilled to just have this conversation with you. When you were young, you joined the army for 12 years, which was, I would say, a very masculine dominated era of your life, which eventually changed to the opposite end of that spectrum, or maybe a harmonious version of that, where you discovered a Buddhist center and then moved to the French countryside. I would just like to know how those early experiences influenced your approach to holding space for others in their healing journeys.
Growing up as a kid, I always felt that I was in a place that I didn't fully belong. And I never really understood what belonging meant. And now I can put words to it as I felt like I wasn't seen for my full spectrum of being, for my changing ideas, for my desires, for my fears. And nothing seemed to resonate with me. And I was brought up with my brother and my mom. Me and my brother have different dads. And it was a hard decision for me to leave my home because at 16, at 15, I signed up for the military. And at 16, I left home. And I remember that it was leaving my brother was the toughest thing because he was like my best friend. We have 7 years between us. So I was taking care of him whilst at the same time having the jokes, like playing around with him. And we could have them conversations. Like I felt like he was so much more mature than other people realized. Like we could have really deep conversations. So when I left, that was tough. But I knew that it was eating me up by staying in that village that I was in, even though I did have close friends, but just the groups that we were in were very toxic. They were very in the wounded masculine, lots of boys being very abusive and neglectful to the girls. So we were young at that time, but then I could see that ripple out to everything. So when I joined the military, it was like I felt safe because I had the structure. I love structure. I craved it because I didn't really have it at home. So I craved that, and I craved being held by these men. And I mean, for them to tell me what to do and to guide me in a way. I looked up to them because I didn't have a dad until I met my dad at 18 years old. I was brought up without a father figure. Actually, the father figure that I had was abusive, and that was for 6 years. So I had this very like deluded idea about men and my own relationship with myself as a woman. So I just pushed and pushed like as hard as my body would go to be this person that people approved of. And they did. Like I shone in the military. I did really, really well. I wasn't the type of person I knew I was playing a game. I knew it was a game, but I loved the game in so many ways. I loved that I could just put on my running shoes and run as fast as I could and I would be approved of. Like that for me was easy. The hard part was emotions. I had no idea how to deal with my emotions. And I had this wake-up call one day, and it was actually when I came off the hormonal contraceptive pill, which was around 20 years old. So at this point, I was married. I'm married really young. And I decided that, I'm going to come off the pill. I'm married. And my marriage was not feeling so good, to be honest with you. It just didn't feel right. Things just didn't feel right. And then I came off of the pill, and then this huge awakening happened. I started to realize things. It was like I woke up. It was like I could see clearly for the first time. And what I was seeing didn't feel good either. It felt really misjointed. It felt really out of place. And I ended up separating from my husband. And we'd already bought a place in France at this time, which we were going to use for retreats. I was going to leave the army, this big dream. I took it on by myself with my family. We went into the middle of nowhere in France, opened this yoga retreat that was thriving for 4 years. And then the pandemic happened. The business went down.
Everything changed.
Everything changed, like for so many people. And then I went to Guatemala to do a metaphysics course, which was basically based on lucid dreaming, meditation. Went deeper into that. And that's where I met my daughter's dad and fell spontaneously in love. And 4 months later, I was pregnant. And then this was just a whole journey of getting back to know my body, because her dad is very much, he's someone that can hold space for everything. He's very emotionally, you would say, intelligent, that kind of token term. But there was this book that I haven't mentioned that I should mention. It's called Yoni Shakti. And it's written by someone called Uma. And this book opened me up because I realized for the first time why there was such an awakening when I came back to my body off the hormonal pill. Why, when I started following my cycle, I was able to notice more about myself and hold more. And that was the journey of why women's circles are so powerful, because you get to see one another, you get to witness one another without judging them or trying to fix them. And you learn this skill that wasn't taught to me, which was holding space for everything without trying to change it or fix it. And just by being in circle, witnessing one another, we remember that. Like it's so in our bones to do that for one another, because fixing's overwhelming. The mind is always trying to find an answer because maybe it's uncomfortable to see that person upset or sad or see them with that certain guy. But it comes down to this trust, like this trust of another person's journey.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that so vulnerably and honestly. I love that you say that witnessing without fixing. That's so important. I feel like in grief work, what I've learned is that when you try to fix the unfixable, we create this massive dissonance that adds to the suffering. There's so much pain involved, right? Because of the loss, the nature of loss, the duality of this world we live in, and all the things. There's so much pain. But the suffering is kind of like that extra icing, bad icing, not good icing on the cake, like on this crappy cake we were dealt, right? And we can't fix the loss, but we can minimize the suffering. And what I hear you when you share this is that in holding in the women's circle, in holding each other fully, just as we are, witnessing and taking it all in with love and expansive energy is how we heal, right? I use the word heal lightly because I believe that we are inherently whole human beings having human experiences, and sometimes we just absorb so much of what we should be in society, depending on where we live, that this is where all of the dissonance comes from. But I hear you and I can relate to it so much. I hold a grief group with a colleague. Her name is Melinda Chinen, and she always says, grief just wants to be witnessed. Like there is nothing to change. We're not here to fix anything. We just want to witness you and that's it. And that sounds so simple, but it's so powerful.
It sounds so simple. And yeah, it is the toughest thing sometimes, like you said, to get out of our own ways, get out of the conditioned way of relating to human beings, because there is that idea that things are broken, that people need to be fixed. And that I love how you unpacked healing as the word, because it's a word that's used all of the time. And then we start to believe that we're not whole, that we are, that's it. We need someone to come and save us.
Right. And so much of it is just acceptance for all that we are. I want to ask you about how the profound experience of motherhood and birth changed your life, and what was this transformative process and how did it reshape you into the version that I'm witnessing today?
I knew that I would welcome a child if one came, but I was never the one to be like, I really want a baby by this age with this person. It just wasn't in my line of thought. So when I became pregnant after 4 months of knowing Elan, I knew right away that I would keep her. It was a surprise and excitement. And he, at this time, did not want a baby. And it was like this mother bear energy came up in me to be like, well, she's staying. So we're going to have to figure this out or I'll do this on my own. And this just came so naturally. Like there was no fight in this. And I realized there was one point I was convinced that she was a boy. And I had to go and have an emergency scan because I had some bleeding at 8 weeks. So I went, and I didn't know at the time anything, literally nothing about pregnancy. I didn't know how by having an internal scan could actually lead to miscarriages in some cases. Like I didn't know any of this because there's something going inside you up towards your cervix.
I just found out.
Yeah, like these things, they weren't shared. And I was in France and there was not really that much communication. So I experienced that there was this lack of information shared with mothers. And I almost felt like I was taking their time up. It didn't feel comfortable for me to be in there. But the doctor at the time said to me, I had a second scan. The second scan, to make sure everything was okay, they said she. So I found out that Araya was a girl. And I was so shocked. I didn't want to know, but I found out and I felt sick because I felt it was so funny, the bias I had around a girl and a boy and what it meant. I actually felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do so much womb work. I'm going to have to do so much like mother wound work. All these things came up for me and I felt sad. I felt a sadness. And then I realized, boy or girl, it doesn't matter. This work that's just come into my awareness is there. So now we can do it. Girl or boy, it does not matter. So Araya has coming into my life has taught me so many things about myself, where I was kept in a box, where I had these ideas about myself and life. And she also woke me up to the birthing industry, the system, and that was mind-blowing. That's why I started my podcast, because I realized, I know nothing about undisturbed birth. I didn't even know undisturbed birth existed. I just thought you go in the system, you go to the hospital, the doctor catches the baby or helps the baby out. I did not know anything about undisturbed birth, and this blew my mind. And there's a documentary called, I think it's Business of Being Born Business of Being Born. And you know Ricky Lake?
Yes.
So Ricky, like she
way back from the 90s, was it? Early 2000s?
Yeah. She created this documentary. And in that documentary is everything that, like, there will be the threads for trying to unravel this. And this lays so deeply in my subconscious. So even when I gave birth, there was a part of me that felt like I needed a doctor there. And especially what came to mind was a male doctor to help me, to save me. And this was even after all of the work. So as I gave birth and I cracked open, all of these subconscious beliefs also rose to the surface. And so that's why I think everyone's journey through pregnancy and birth and motherhood is so unique, because even though it might not go smoothly sometimes, it might not go as planned, which doesn't exist, it shows you where there is these conditioned beliefs still lie. And so we get to have them as gems to actually look at them, unravel them, and step forward in a new way that serves ourselves and humanity.
I love how you reframe the conditioned beliefs as gems. I think that's a beautiful way. No, that's a beautiful way to look at them, because it invites you to admire the different qualities of it. And I think it's very powerful to do that. Like, it's interesting how you said when you found out it was a girl, you had all these big feelings around it that maybe weren't so welcoming. It was just kind of like, really? Or, whatever you were feeling at the time. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I hear that so often. And, everybody wants the boy, and it's so much easier with boys, and they'll have less problems as boys, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I think it's important to analyze all of these perspectives. Where does that come from? How has that been passed down to us? We were having a brief chat before we started the recording about this. I don't have children, but I honor that motherhood is the most sacred and most beautiful, most powerful, in my opinion, like the most beautiful thing that a woman can experience, a birthing person can experience. And even though I haven't gone through it, I just honor how powerful of an experience that is. You're literally bringing a soul into your portal from the spirit world to the human world. It doesn't get better than that. At the same time, there's so many, even with myself, and we can do a separate podcast about that. I'm not going to get into it here, but there's so many limiting beliefs and falsehoods about motherhood that I've learned through my girlfriends as an adult, through their experiences with motherhood, is where I've learned it. I was like, people are born every single day. How do we not know all of these details about birthing and motherhood and the first trimester and the last one and the postpartum care and all of these things that should be common knowledge, but it's not. So your work is very important.
So true. Next season on the podcast is all dedicated to the friends and families and partners of the mother, because the tribe is so important. And even, you don't have your child right now, but you're in your mother like archetype of taking care and nourishing, and it's, it manifests in different ways, whether you have a child, you have a project, a dog, like your home. It's so different because actually the mother energy is this mature feminine, you could call it. That's like a key, like a token term being thrown around, but it's really that you don't need to be saved anymore, that you have everything that you need and you can show up and you can support yourself and you have energy for others. So it's like you said, just listening to what thoughts come through, what comes out of your mouth, who you're surrounding yourself by, and just saying, do I believe this? Like, whose voice is this? Whose truth is that? And that's a really powerful one. Who is saying this?
I feel that so profoundly. This past year was an intentional unfolding and uncovering and rediscovering of who I am. What is my voice? You would think that is such a simple question, but it's not. It's very profound and it's very layered. And a lot of the things that we say as unquestionable facts that we just don't even think twice about are voices that have been influencing us on so many levels throughout our lives that have calcified around us and we take as truth. And so this year, for example, for me was a lot of unbecoming and relearning and unlearning and exploring this new side, which, like you said, includes motherhood in the sense of giving birth to this project and being full of ideas and allowing them to manifest in the physical. It's not easy. Like, this work is not easy. And I don't think it's something that we do alone. So I know that you hold the women's circles. I know that there's a lot of power in that. And I would love for you to give us a little bit of insight as to what that looks like and how you hold these spaces.
Yeah, I'd love to. I remember the first time that I sat in the circle. It was around 12 years ago. And for the first time, I felt myself, first of all, I felt myself very vulnerable of being seen. Because I mentioned before, I was used to being seen because I was very good at sport. I was very good at my job. So the military, I was used to getting medals, people knowing my face, but not really knowing me. So when it came to this first women's circle and I was calling myself forward to be true to myself, to my emotions, I realized, one, how nerve-wracking that was, and two, how I didn't actually know how I felt. I did not have a clue what was going on inside of me. I could say, oh, I don't want to do, these thoughts coming through, like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here. But I didn't know how to get underneath that. Like, well, why? I didn't even know to ask the questions. Well, why don't I want to be here? And from that first circle, I witnessed women sharing their story. And I was so inspired by how they could feel their physical body and share their emotions and be so brave and courageous and be able to do it. Like, I did not know how to do it. I didn't have these skills and I didn't even know, like, people had these skills. When I saw it, I witnessed it, and I felt this feeling of belonging for the first time, and that kind of began this unraveling and knowing that these spaces are so powerful. And I started to host women's circles around the world. I at this point I was doing a lot of volunteering, so I went to Israel and Palestine, and I went to Kenya. I went to India. Like, I went many different places doing volunteer work, and I would just hold circles. And the first one that I held, we had 70 women in there at least, from the age of 15 all the way to the age of 85. Like, it was incredible. And I feel like that was a gift for me to see this full spectrum of age and experiences and women from all around the world. And also noticing in myself how this made me feel to create this space, because it's easy. It's not like it's hard. When you look at what you're doing, you're just bringing women together. But the hard part is getting over these fears and limitations. So as a space holder, you're also challenging this all of the time. And as a woman going to circle, you're also doing the same thing. Because if a woman shares, when anyone shares something, the sounds come into your physical body and something is triggered. You're trying to associate. And so you might be triggered consciously, subconsciously, in a positive or in a way that feels uncomfortable. And so in circle, we're learning how to hold space for that, and also know that you can come back to it, because there's that connection when someone is speaking and saying, I dedicate my awareness to you, and creating that channel between you both so you can fully receive without needing to even know what the next step is, or to know what that person, what happened after that story, but just literally being in the present moment. And we can see there's ways of thinking or speaking or behaving that's very habitual when it comes to being in relation with one another. So it might be that someone's saying something that triggers something in me, like, oh, I had that experience, and suddenly I'm feeling sad for myself, and I've gone away from that person. So it's that practice of, yes, I can feel that, I witnessed that in myself, and I'm still here with you. So it's a really deep meditation, and we're usually going for an hour online, but in person it's longer. It's usually 2 hours. And at the end, there is this feeling that you've been seen, and I feel that it's for our nervous system. If you're in a safe space, like if you're in a space that you feel safe, sorry, because we're the only ones that can say it's safe, but you can feel the layers of you have been witnessed, and it's like soothing for the nervous system, because it's this feeling of community. I think that for myself is what I was craving, of belonging, and community looks so much different for me than I thought it would. But yeah, it is a definite practice, and one, it's not something I would say, if there's a women's circle, that it's going to be the one. You just go if you feel called to, try it out. If it doesn't feel good, that's okay. Maybe you talk to the organizer with the things that are coming up, or maybe you find somewhere else, because there's so many. And this is why I wrote the book, is because we need more. We need it so there are smaller groups of like 6 women, so that everyone has a chance to speak and to be heard. When we've had groups before of 20, you don't get much time, and it's a long time to stay focused on what people are saying. It's tiring in some ways. So having these pop-up groups, having them online, I have a smaller one, which is from my closest, which is like, we have 5 women in there, and we do that every single week. And that is what I would love to see happen, is women just making their own circles.
Thank you for that. I call it the dinner table size. Like if you were all sitting around a dinner table and everybody had a chance to speak, it's like the ideal, quote unquote, ideal size. I hear also a contrast between when you were in the army, for example, when you said, oh, I felt a sense of belonging there that I needed at the time, or that I thought I needed at the time. But then that sounds worlds apart from the sense of belonging that you're talking about here. Very high contrast, it seems like.
It's a great observation. And I think that comes down to my inner child wounds of needing a masculine figure. I didn't know the difference between wounded masculine or wounded man. Like, I didn't know that difference. I just felt that if a man wasn't beating me, and he had a good job, and he could take care of himself, then he was a strong man. I couldn't really unravel it much more deeply than that. It was only as I grew up that I realized that I was following men and women that were in a system that I didn't believe in. They were treating people in the way that I didn't believe in. So it was a very superficial security. It's like being in an abusive relationship. I say this sometimes with the military. It was an abusive relationship where I felt safe because my needs were being met, but emotionally, I was being abused and neglected, for sure.
I mean, and that sounds awful, and that sounds like a experience that you've, I don't know if overcome is the right word, or you've transmuted, you've healed from it into this beautiful version that is so hard for us. And I say that lightly. I kind of stumble on my words here a little bit, because I don't believe that we're supposed to heal from everything and we're supposed to tackle every single thing. If you want to, if it's in your heart to do so, absolutely, please, by all means. But it has to be internal. It has to come from the inside. It can't be this forced, well, where's the silver lining in all this situation? And look at the sunny side, and, forced gratitude that I keep seeing in a lot of public spaces. But when it comes from yourself, from a desire or even desperation can be a very powerful tool. When it comes from you, it's different. And I don't mean you, I mean, like, us, or each person seeking out their truth and their transformation. It's very powerful. So I see that and I honor that. Amazing, amazing story. I want to pivot to your brother's story so we could have enough time to talk about that. And I give you the open floor to start wherever you want to. Some people like giving a lot of details, other people don't. So I honor as much as you want to say, starting with his name.
My brother full name is Jacob Baker. I call him Jake. And growing up, so I've gone through this, what I will share previously, and I want to make sure it's from my personal experience. But growing up, so we're 7 years apart. He's younger than me. And I was at an age where I could appreciate a child, and I loved being around him. And we loved being around each other. Like we were best friends. I was always with them. And because my mom was working, so I was taking care with him. I was taking care of him on the night. It's so funny how grief can just get the throat chakra. Like, I can feel it straight away. It's like, yeah. So, and like I mentioned before, when I left in the military, he was the one that I missed the most, and our connection stayed really strong until when I started going down this path of, let's say spirituality, but like dipping my toe in meditation and yoga and coming up with these new ideas. And obviously at that time when I was finding new things, I was trying to push it onto everyone like, hey, you need to do this in your life. Like I was trying to fix everyone with these spiritual teachings. And they did his head in. Obviously, he was at this point in uni, going out drinking, like la la la. And and so we continued to have a beautiful relationship. He's like, his energy is such a joker. He's such a joker. He's loves being around his friends. Like he loves music. He likes everything that's light and fun. And so when I was going deep, that for him was like closed down, like walk away. I do not want to talk about that. I don't want to go there. So I noticed in the last few years this kind of disconnect happening, and I wasn't concerned because I'd had depression before when I was probably from the age of 17 to 20. I had depression, and this was really tough for me with self-harming, with bulimia, but you wouldn't notice from the outside. I was still like top student. And so I knew what it felt like to go to these dark places and to consider ending my life. I knew what that was like. And I felt like there was no way out. And I felt when my brother started to share with me his concerns for his mental health, I can see now in reflection that I wanted to fix him. I didn't want him to be where I was. And actually, the more he told me, I felt like I can hear what I said, which was, he needs to do this, he needs to do that, he needs to, all these things. Because I did not want him to feel what I felt. And by witnessing him, it was making me uncomfortable. So that's the thing of holding my own emotions and this is so wild because I have been practicing and teaching this. When it came to him, I lost it. Like I lost my knowing. It's like I went into this state of fear. So everything I knew went out of the window. And the other thing was I couldn't understand why he wouldn't speak to me. If he had another drink, he wouldn't go anywhere into these emotional conversations. So I struggled with that because I want to talk about things. I want to go dark, but I couldn't accept where he was. And so we had these late night conversations over the last 2 years, and he was sharing things with me and I was holding space. And I know I was on the phone for hours late at night because we're in different time zones. And there was one time he said to me, I'm having suicidal thoughts, so I'm gonna kill myself. So I started to speak to my mom and his girlfriend, He had a girlfriend and he has a child who is 5 now. And they said, yeah, this has been happening. And his friends had contacted me as well sometimes after I opened up about this, saying I'm really worried about him. And so I felt like my nervous system was always up when it came to thinking about my brother. And then on the day, so the lead up, there'd been no like clues or anything like that. Things had seemed to be going fine. He was just about to, the day it happened, he was supposed to go into a football match with a football team that he absolutely loves. And I got a message. So I got a message at, it was like 11 p.m. in Canada, which would have made it, I think, like 2 in the UK, in England, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So before. And he said, Dan, I just want you to know, call me Dan. I just want you to know that I love you and I love Araya, my daughter. And I was like, oh, he must be drunk. So I was like, I love you too. I was like, are you okay? And then I didn't hear anything back. And I was waiting I was just like, had my phone because I was working anyway late at night. I went to bed around 1:30 in the morning. And he sent me a message just after I went to bed that was like, it said, no, I'm not okay. So I wake up in the morning to this message and I knew, like intuitively, I knew something was wrong. And I'm like, Jake. And I started messaging him saying, I need some advice. I need some support. Can you help me? Because I thought that would get him to message me back. And I ring my mom. I'm like, hey, have you heard from him? And she had the same message as me at the same time. We worked out and then nothing. And so there was a lot of confusion around this time. And I'm not completely sure what happened because some people said they had a message and people didn't. So we all thought, oh, it's okay. And then, so it must have been like 1 o'clock. I'm confused on times, honestly, but a few hours later, the next day, I got a phone call from my stepdad, and he said, he's like, Dan, it's not good news. And then he said, we're waiting to find out what's happened. So I felt optimistic. I felt like, oh, he's going to be okay. Maybe he's just drank a lot or something. Maybe, I don't know what happened. And then I didn't get a phone call. So I rang him back. I'm like, hey, what's happening? Oh, it was 10 p.m. at night that I remember because it was later there at that time. I have no idea about time zones right now. This is crazy because I'm trying to work out my brain. But anyway, it was late at night. And he said he's not good news. He's gone. And I could hear like my mom in the background. And I was just so shocked. I was like, what? I didn't even cry. We were staying by a lake that day, like them months leading up. And I was looking at the lake and it was winter. And I was just like, I couldn't put the pieces together. And I didn't feel sad initially. I just felt like, what? I couldn't put it into my brain. And then what came after this was I felt like I wanted to be seen. Like I wanted to talk about it. I was trying to process it. So I was like ringing people, like telling them what had happened and talking, oversharing with people that I didn't even know that just messaged me a few days later saying, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, I need to tell you like this. And I came into this role of being like, I need to stop suicide. Like, I need to stop suicide. Like, I felt like that. And I was very aware, like, I didn't want to distract from my grief. But that felt authentic at the time. And it's probably what I needed to protect, is my protective mechanism. And I started this 5-day mental health online summit, which I did a few months later. So I put myself into organizing these people, all this stuff. And it wasn't until, it's funny how like shifting time zones. Before all that, I actually went home. So I went from Canada to the UK to be with my mum. And I remember seeing my mum at the airport when I came off the plane. The tears just came out like so powerful. Like everything felt like it was coming from this central point in my body. And I had broken down like this before I arrived in the UK. Like I remember just like screaming out at the lake and crying and just like wanting to feel it. I wanted to feel the pain. Like I wanted to, because then it felt real. Like it felt real. But it wasn't until I got to my mum that I realized, oh, this is real. This is happening. But it was still very weird to be in normal everyday conversations in between these waves. That felt super strange to me, because if someone was to tell me this had happened to them, I just wouldn't believe that I would be able to get through it. Like how could that happen? And so I wanted to hold space for everything, which I thought meant I'm just going to sit in my room grieving all day. But the grief came in such a dance that sometimes there was laughter, sometimes there was like this deep remembrance and appreciation, sometimes there was anger, sometimes I say was, but it's still, sometimes there is this feeling that I really understand that that we're all connected, that we're this energy running through everything. And I feel like I deeply appreciate his journey. And then in the next moment, I could be like, how could you do this to us all? How could you leave us? And what I noticed with people holding space for me was, if I said I'm angry, they would try to soothe me by saying, I know you're angry, but this is a mental health issue. And that for me was like, yeah, and I can be angry. I can do that. I can be angry. And I just felt like this has been, for me, holding this, like the most incredibly painful yet beautiful journey back to myself and understanding grief, because I sit with my brother every night. I light a candle for him. I look at his beautiful face. I pull his memory up. And my biggest fear I noticed is that I'm afraid that I will lose his memory. I'm afraid that I'll lose touch of him. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I can look at photos and pictures and feel nothing, like completely numb. And then in the next moment, it's like he's coming and he holds me and he's right next to me. And it's like he's right there. And that I love, and I love breaking down and crying because I feel him so close, and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. As I observe myself and like my mother, I see so much strength and courage in my mom as she shows up and she holds space for her emotions. I'm learning so much through her, and it's hard to put into words, but there's like a depth with our relationship now as I see like I see her in a different way. And it's also so beautiful as well to see her hold this and honor it, because she's not going into the way that society would like people to deal with grief and go through these stages, which is, in my opinion, just wild that we're putting grief into stages. Like, this is a human experience. And I feel like I've always really respected other cultures for how they deal with grief and death, because I've been traveling. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. Like in Africa, they do the funeral for days and they have the body out so you can see, and they're singing, and they're dancing, and they're screaming, and they're crying, and the grieving is so loud and so powerful, and sometimes deafening. Like, they just let it come, they let it flow through, and this is respected and honored in these cultures. And then I look at like what I've been brought up with and what I've seen, and it's avoided. Like, death and grief is avoided at all costs. The conversation of it, the holding space for it, and that I didn't want to do. I wanted to learn. So I've been reading so much. I've been asking people about their experiences of how they honor people that have transitioned. And I had a really powerful, like, because I was in Peru after I left England, and I just went into like plant medicines and healing and all this stuff with space in between. Like, I try not to get lost in it. But I had a hypnotherapy session and I saw my brother, and for the first time I realized something that I had not seen before, because every night I put my brother's picture in front of me, the candle, and I've been asking him for help, like, help me through this, help mum, like, help. And then in this hypnotherapy session, I saw him and he was afraid and he was scared, and he's like, I don't know where I am. And I realized, like, oh, he's in transition, just like a child being born. Like, you wouldn't be asking the baby, like, oh, hey, what do we do next? Like, what do you want? Da-da-da-da. No, you hold the baby, you nourish them, you become this safe space for them. So when I realize that, when I think of my brother and I see him, I don't ask him for anything. I just love him and I just say, I love you and you're going to be okay. Like everything's okay. And I don't have any solid beliefs about what happens after death, but I just do this. And it feels like it resonates much more than any other thing that I have practiced. And then I realize as I do this, I can notice thoughts come up about him, but I see where it's me locked in my own patterns. When I feel anger towards him, or if I feel like I want him back, or all any of these things, it's all because I want it. And then I forget about his precious journey and the courage that he had to even speak it out and to notice it. Like he didn't go through his life pushing it down. It came up and he didn't have the tools. He didn't have the support. And this is not about guilt. This is just highlighting how our society is. He didn't know where to go. And so it's like being in that such a vulnerable place, like out in the open with all the elements and no one there to help you. And it's not just like someone should have saved him. It's the other side of also having something within you to show up, to hold that. And that's why I feel it's so important to have these skills of holding our emotion as we move through this. And it's teaching me so much. And I hate that it's teaching me so much as well, because I want him here. Like I want to see him at Christmas. I want all of these things. And I feel I've let him down because I'm only finding out right now. But then it's the same thing as, like I said in the birth at the beginning. We learn things through our birth. And we learn things through the death of people, through however they left to how we're processing it. And I think it's always showing up, like in every moment, showing up. And one of the things I ask myself a lot is, what would serve me right now? Because that pulls me out of the mind, pulls me back into the body. Like, what would serve me right now? Because I might find myself scrolling through social media or finding like a poem, like looking through the internet, like something take this away, when actually just to lie down, feel where that is in my body, feel it through deeply, and just hold it and say, I'm not going anywhere. Like I'm going to stay and I'm going to hold it. That is the most precious gift, because there's no changing what happened. It's one of them situations in life where I cannot do anything to turn back time. Like I cannot take my mother's pain away. I cannot bring him back to life. I cannot give his daughter a dad. Like I can't do that. It's impossible. The only thing is how much can I show up for all of them and myself? How can I do that? So that is like the new twist on it all for me.
I don't want to touch any word that you said. You said it so beautifully. I resonate fully with it, as sort of a similar experience with my brother, with the protective sister. I see the protective sister in you that did her best. And we can know what we know for ourselves, but it's so difficult when there's a level of closeness with the other person that we feel the innate urge to rescue in times of chaos. I had the same feeling with my brother, and I see that protective sister lives on to this day. Like she's still very much alive and kicking. And I heard that so loudly when you said, I had this hypnotherapy session and I saw him and I just realized I can't ask anything of him because he's busy right now. And I hear that, I honor that fully, and I see you. There's so much wisdom in your words. I also want to make a side note. This happened this year, so it hasn't even been a full year. This is your year of firsts. I hear you when you were recounting some of the timelines, and it's a little bit of a struggle to kind of put it all together. That's completely normal. This first year is brutal. There's a lot of that disconnectedness in terms of everything gets a little bit warped. I call it grief time. It's like it's not linear at all. It feels like yesterday and an eternity all at once, and you don't know left from right. So I hear that coming through. I also hear where you talk about your mother. I have this reverence for my mother that I never wish I found out this way. I admire her so much. There's this strength that I don't know how she does it. But at the same time, I'm like, gosh, did it really have to be this way? Did it have to be because of this? So I love the lessons. I love the beauty. I love your ability to hold both the pain, like you said, excuse me, and the beautiful part. There's like a sacredness to it that is very intangible. I call it living in the in-between, where you can touch like that very thin space between, and I'm using this loosely, like heaven and earth, this very solid 3D world we live in. And there's like a space in between that grief just catapults you in there. And you can touch it. You could just you could touch it. It's weird. It's if you get to a place of quiet, like you said, you sit with your emotions, you allow them to be, you don't avoid them. You just sit there. There's a place where it all comes together in a beautiful and painful way all at once. So I hear that coming through.
I love how you used your words as well, because that's one of the other things. I think I messaged you. It's like we become this poet and artist because feelings are so new, and it's like, how do I express this? And that's why I think art and poems and songs, they really do help to understand instead of it being hidden away. And it does make me feel almost magic at the same time because of that thing you're explaining of being in between worlds, and also helps me feel more human. I feel personally that I've been desensitized from so much. I worked in a hospital and I used to be the one who was cleaning the humans after they died. Like I was the one doing that, and I felt like desensitized after it. Like these people were people with families, but I'd done it so much to protect myself because I didn't know how to deal with it that I become desensitized. And I think that's the way that I've also been brought up, and I'm not saying through my family, but through society, of not being with emotions, and we get further and further away from this knowing that we are the species connected to one another. So grief just gets you back to reality, to feel like, oh, I am a human being and all of us are connected. We all have emotions. Like it doesn't matter where you're from, we feel pain, like we bleed the same. It just brings that connection, brings it to life. Like it makes it real. And I think there's so much out there, so many words that it can sometimes just become words. But when you feel it as a knowing and not a concept, it's actually a really beautiful gift that we have. And at the same time, why me? But that's it. All them things are valid. All them questions as well. Why me, and ifs and buts, and yeah, let them all in. And you said something before, like the part of you is still existing, of being that protective sister. And that also helped me to know that there's still that first day that lives inside of me, the first moment I heard that he had died, the first of every, like they still exist inside of us. So when that comes up, it's not like I'm going backwards in any of this journey, which is ridiculous anyway. Like it is like actually I'm going backwards because that part does live there and it's come up. So it's going backwards down this like timeline, backwards and forwards. And when me and my mum have been unraveling this, that really helped because I say to her, like, it's the first time you is here right now. So let's hold space for it. And that is just to put it in the bigger picture really helps us.
Beautifully stated. The first year of learning this, how to be in this new reality. And there's numbness. For me, there was disconnection. Like I felt very disconnected from my body, from my reality, from everything. And it's very difficult to process. I remember when my brother died, one of my best friends, her mom had passed 10 months before my brother died. And she said, oh, honey, just show yourself grace. And that word, I've obviously heard it before, no problem, but it didn't take on meaning until I started exploring what exactly does that mean? What does that look like? How is grace? How can I make grace a practice? And it was just a constant, like, the way I see it is, a baby's learning how to walk. If the baby falls, are you going to be like, oh, why can't you walk? What is wrong with you? No, you just hold it and try again, and you try again, and you try again until you start literally catching your footing. And the rest of the innate knowledge that is being human takes over. And that's part of it. We are these babies, emotionally, spiritually. Your relationship with your mom, let me speak on my terms. Like my relationship with my mom is different now. She's still my mom, but she's a mom to a son, heaven side, and a daughter, earth side. And I use those terms loosely. I'm giving her grace, and I have to honor that. Maybe my mom sometimes feels like she doesn't want to be here. And that has nothing against me. That has nothing to do with me. It's just that she wants her son. So it's honoring all of these truths. It's realizing that everything has shifted. It's honoring that we can hold it all, and yet it sucks. It still sucks. We could do all the work in the world and it sucks at the end of the day. We just want our person back and they're not coming back. And that permanency factor is brutal. It's brutal. And it shifts with time. It doesn't sting as much. I still live with the fear. I heard you say that you're scared to like forget. And the loudness of the void will not let us forget. But there are some memories that get a little bit fuzzy around the edges. And especially when we look at when I look at pictures, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that, and remember this, and how could I even forget? So I honor that. I saw you have a picture of your brother. You want to show him? I don't know if that's something you'd like to do.
I have a few of them stuck together because we've been traveling. So
that's beautiful.
When I was a baby, I don't know if I can that with us. And that's
is this the picture that you light a candle at night?
Yeah, I changed sides because I know I'm getting used to the pictures, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I become desensitized to that. So I'm like, I need new pictures because all I'm seeing is just like pixels sometimes. I don't feel. So it's like constantly shifting. And I feel like it's this change in relationship, a new relationship with him, just as you mentioned with your mother, like the same with me and my mother is, and all of our relationships. I feel like there's this, I tried so much to think about a rite of passage into this new role of like a sister with a brother who is dead. Like that's a rite of passage, a mother with a son who is dead. And that rite of passage is seeing the person come over this bridge and be like, hey, I see you for everything that comes up, and things aren't going to be the same, and I love you, and here you are. And I think that's also the thing that I remember from Holding Circle is these rites of passage are so important and so necessary, which is in these cultures that we were speaking about before, they have this rite of passage. Like they have this bridge, this crossover. It's not just like a fast fix. And if you're not over this bridge in like I don't even know what time frame they give people for grieving, but like say 6 months, if you're not over that bridge and getting on with your life, like that doesn't exist. Whereas in our society, let me just speak of the UK, it's like get back to working, get back to being yourself. Can we not talk about it all the time because I've got my own life? It's like there's so many things, which is sad because of the loss of tribe, because we're not all sat in circle around the fire singing and grieving together and holding one another. There is that disconnect, but we can reclaim it by having the people closest to us, like talking, sharing and listening. And I think this, for example, your beautiful podcast is an example of that, of community. And it doesn't look like we're not sat around a fire right now. I'd love to be doing, I don't know, hit a drum and stuff. Like I'd love to do that. But we're here and this is what we have. And this is perfect because it resonates inside of our body, just like sitting around that fire. Like we feel safe right now. We feel seen and we're sharing our experiences, which is beautiful. So I want to say again, thank you for what you're doing. Like this will really help people. And I've just shared your podcast with my mother as well. So I'm really grateful to like meet you in real life, digital life, to feel that safety with you and that trust in what you're doing, because that's also important. And I think that's why my mom's avoided. I can't even speak for her. Why I've avoided listening to some stuff because I don't know who that person is. But you make a really beautiful effort showing us who you are and your story. So thank you.
I received that fully. That was very touching. Thank you very much. I receive it fully. This is part of my healing journey, or my journey to coming back home to myself and to accepting and to processing and transmuting and all the things and exploring. This podcast is a note to my brother. This whole project that came out of a need to connect with people like you on this journey. Unfortunately, I hate the reason. I absolutely hate the reason, but I love the people that I have connected with and the way in which we have connected. It's so authentic. Grief has this ability to, it's like a fire. It burns everything down to the absolute core. If there's anything left, usually, if we're still here, there is. So that means that we get to rebuild from there. And it's whatever we want it to be. And when I sat with myself and I said, what do I want? I said, I want to connect with other people on this journey. I want to give this a voice. I don't understand why at least in this society, we're so quiet about it. And like I said, I'm not a mother, but I have this idea that grief in a way is like motherhood, but not for the reason that one may think. It's more like when a baby is born, so is a mother. And that mother, telling that mother, like, please don't talk about your baby, to me is the equivalent of telling a grieving person, please don't talk about your person. It's like, how can I not? They're everything I know. They are a part of my reality, and they will forever be a part of my reality. I hope I made the connection there, because I know that's a little bit of a stretch with that example.
I love that. I love that so much, because it actually brings to mind a woman, you know, holding as a doula, a birth doula. Women are known to be birth doulas, but also on the other side of being the doula midwife, the midwife of death as well at the same time, because it's the same cycle. So we hold that, and I think grieving in whatever way comes through, whatever expression, which is authentic and safe, let's say, you know, like it's so, I mean, I'm sure you go into this in other episodes, but just like understanding what is happening for yourself. This is something you reclaim, and I feel like it's very powerful for women to reclaim that, because we've been doing it since the beginning of time, holding space for life and for death.
So I wanted to ask you about biomagnetic practices. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's great. So my partner introduced this practice to me. He's the founder of Evolving Humans, and he went pretty viral, like back in the day, like 2016, with the work that he was doing, where he would just be going around the streets and working with people's injuries and emotions. And through the skill that he acquired through an awakening that he had, his story, he can feel energy through his hands. And he started to explore this, and he can feel where the pain is, and feel the physical, emotional pain in the body. And he works by holding space for it. And it's all what we've been talking about. It's not like Reiki where you push into the energy, you hold, because in Reiki, the way I was taught anyway, you're kind of very close to the body to feel the energy. This is more about holding space for it. So right now, we could do a quick practice. I can show you in a few moments. So if you were to feel into bringing up a memory of your brother, and to anyone listening, whoever is that person, and tapping into that sensation of the knowing that they're not here anymore in this physical form. Now that resonates somewhere inside your body. There's a sensation inside of your body. So if you can just place your awareness on that sensation, it's around your chest. So if you feel deeply, and notice if the mind tries to label this as a tingling sensation or it has a label for it, just notice and say thank you and go back to the sensation. And if you feel deeply that sensation, you'll notice that it can move. It can become heightened. It can become almost invisible. It could move down your shoulder or your face. And the next part of this practice is we bring in the hand. So thinking about your right or your left hand, whichever one you feel drawn to, and you start to raise your arm up, but your arm is really soft, like your shoulder is soft, your elbow is soft, and we're coming from the outside in. So wherever that energy is inside of your body, you want to bring the hand in front of it. So for me, like I feel it more towards my diaphragm. So my hand is in front of my diaphragm, and I'm away from the body. And let the hand be nice and soft. You can just close your eyes for a moment and feel into the palm of the hand. And it's in front of this part that you've identified inside of your body. If the hand is super tingly right now, take it back a little bit, like away from you. If you can't feel anything, just come a little bit closer. And the idea is that you're holding the outer edge of this bubble, this energy radiating from your body, because you feel it. It's a sensation, so it's a vibration. If your hand is super tingly, take it away, like take it further away, because you don't want to push into it, but just hold space for it. And now your awareness goes inside your body again. Leave the hand where it is to hold the space and feel deeply inside your body. And you can whisper in your mind, I love you, I witness you, and you're just feeling the sensation. Now, if the sensation moves, So mine's moving down towards my stomach. My hand follows. And there is this union between the witnessing and the inside of your body. And you continue to do that. I would say thanks to your body. This practice can go on for a long time. But by doing that, you're holding space for the sensation. You're noticing any words that have been labeled. And naturally, what happens is through that space that you're holding, there's a softening happening in the vibration. And it starts to move and dance around. And from that, without even needing to know why or any expectations, things start to become processed. You might have openings and clarity. And you just go in without needing to know the answer or without it needing to go away. That's one of the key points is if you feel that it's a pain that you want to get rid of, you have to change your mindset because the hand is holding the loving awareness with no bias. And the stuff that Elon, my partner, has been doing, he works in the labs where he's showing what is happening to the energy inside of the body through these machines that he's using. As he does this work, the energy starts to move and dissipate just by that loving awareness. And so it's very interesting. He wanted to bring the science with it because we're in an age where the mind wants to know. So once the mind's settled and knows it's real, then you can get into the practice again. Just start doing that when something big comes up, like a big emotion that you feel like you can't handle and you feel like it's pushing you to distract or to be some way self-harming. Just lay your body down and do this practice. And if you can't hold your hand up, it's distracting, just feel, and enough is just to feel and follow the sensations in your body. And this is something that I'll be sharing so I decided that I'll be doing every month a gathering for suicide loss survivors. And the next one's on the 10th of December. I'm not sure when this will be released, but there'll be one every single month and it'll be free. And this gathering is to hold space for our loved ones, hold space for ourselves, and learn a skill like this practice to help us soothe our nervous system when things just seem like they are spiraling out of control, when you need that anchor to find a little bit of peace.
What a beautiful gift. Thank you for that. I hope our listeners were following along there. And if you were, let us know where you identified this tingling sensation, where it lives inside of you, and if you were able to hold space. I know that I felt it in my chest area and it just moved kind of to my shoulders and to the side. And it was interesting because the memory that came up was this very beautiful memory. It's one of the last memories of my brother that just always triggers me to just cry uncontrollably. And for whatever reason, it was literally like being able to freeze frame it for a second in a very beautiful way. So thank you for that gift. I'm going to share this as a clip so people can practice and join your groups if they want to. I know this is a very needed space, both for the women's group that you hold and for the suicide surviving. Is it for siblings only or just anybody who's experienced this type of loss? Anybody. Okay. Yeah. And with that, where can people find information? What's the best way to reach you? Where can they find information? And obviously I'll link everything in the show notes as well, but I would like for you to say it.
I'm going to go through Instagram. I'll say my Instagram account first. So I have my Instagram account, which you'll find in the show notes, Danielle Catherine Baker. And in my little bio, you're going to find all the links to the events that are coming up. And if you feel drawn to the Women's Circle site, that also has its own account. I have like 3 accounts. So the Women's Circle one, and that's sharing some reminders about how to exist fully embodied and fully present. And then the depths of motherhood, if anyone's interested in undisturbed birth, that one has its own as well. I love a good Instagram account. And I have my website, so everything is on there as well. But you'll find pretty much everything through my personal one.
I will link everything in the show notes. I also know that you had a very generous offer for some of our listeners who would be interested in joining.
Yes, I would be honored for you, whoever's listening, to join me, and please take advantage of the offer.
So we have the groups, we have the book. What's next? What's in for Danielle in 2024? And also any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Love it. So I've just come back to the circles again. I had a spontaneous break. I didn't mention that I did have 5 months off, 6 months off. And then I came back because I was inspired again. I lost all inspiration and I couldn't touch anything, which was great. I needed it. And so I came back with the women's circles and will continue to do them for next year. So I'm working right now on a book dedicated to maiden going into womanhood. So understanding all of the physiological aspects, things that we might not be taught in school, what it means to have a period, how to take care of ourselves, like what certain arisings mean, so that we don't have to straight away go to the medical system to take away these things that have been classed as suffering or painful or a nuisance. So that's the kind of thing that I'm focusing on. And my inspiration is my daughter. I want to create something for her to give to her when she grows up. And probably she's going to be living and breathing this. So she probably won't read the book, but that's where it's coming from. And with all of this I am processing my own journey through life. Like you mentioned with your podcast, I'm doing the same through this because I didn't have it growing up. So I'm constantly learning and remembering what it means to exist in a way that is authentic to me, that is connected to nature, connected to my own rhythms, connected to my family. Oh, my candle went wild then. I have a thing that says, if the candle starts flickering, then that's my brother. That's what my brother's girlfriend says.
He's acknowledging this moment. I love that.
He'll be laughing. Like if he exists in some way, he'd be like, honestly, he always felt like I was like trying to show off or something. So he would be laughing right now. Be like, there you go. I gifted you.
Oh my goodness. So we honor him wherever he is and feel his energy fully. Danielle, thank you. It has been an honor, a pleasure. You are a light. I love your energy. I told you that from the get-go. And I know that this will help so many people. I will link all of the things we talked about and all of the offers in the show notes so that people can connect with you, and you can also listen to her podcast and contact her as well. With that being said, what would Danielle today tell, let's say, 11-year-old Danielle?
It's a good one. Even though things may feel difficult right now, you're going to figure it out. Everything's going to be okay. And I love you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Nina.
That's it for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Grief and Light podcast. I'd also love to connect with you and hear your thoughts and your stories. Feel free to share them with me via my Instagram page at Grief and Light, or you can also visit griefandlight.com for more information and updates. Thank you so much for being here, for being you, and always remember, you are not alone.